Imagine where your team would be if you had Kareem Hunt or J.K. Dobbins as a running back option instead of looking at your team and figuring out which running back handcuff is going to provide some value this week. Well, today I'm bringing you 10 mustache players heading into week 6 fantasy football that you can add to your team to help bolster your overall roster. And starting off with player number 1, it is going to be A.D. Mitchell for the Indianapolis Colts. And you're going to say to me, Caleb, hasn't A.D. Mitchell been on this list before? Yes, he has. A.D. Mitchell is the type of prospect and the type of wide receiver that I'm super interested in, because if we're looking at this overall offense, the thing that we're going to notice is a lot of hype has been made about Michael Pittman Jr., his lack of production with Anthony Richardson, but his resurgence with Joe Flacco. You got Josh Downs coming in the last 2 weeks looking really good. And then you have Alec Pierce over the top. And so a lot of people are going to be saying, well, A.D. Mitchell, Caleb, is kind of that fourth wide receiver in this offense. And I agree with you, but I would say that A.D. Mitchell, as he continues to progress, he did see 4 receptions in the loss in week 4 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He ran a 27% snap share, had 7 total targets for 4 receptions and 38 yards. Now, the thing we do know about A.D. Mitchell, like we said, has that top 2 round draft capital pedigree. A.D. Mitchell, as much as I like a guy like Alec Pierce, and Alec Pierce has been balling, I do think as we continue on into the season, A.D. Mitchell will continue to take over. When we look at the Colts overall offense, you're going to see that it's clearly still the Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs show, with A.D. Mitchell clearly, based on the snap share, being the wide receiver 4. But I want to continue to bet on a guy like A.D. Mitchell to come up going in the clutch, because even though he only had 19 snaps, he had 7 total targets. We see Alec Pierce had 52 snaps, only 3 total targets. I know Alec Pierce is the lawn ball game winner, shoot down, 60-yard Randy Moss style player, but I do want to have a shot on A.D. Mitchell as my first mustache player. My second mustache player is going to be Jaylen Pul for the Patriots. And hear me out. With the change of quarterback, I'm not saying that Drake May is all of a sudden going to turn Jaylen Pul into a fantasy football wide receiver. The thing that I do want to talk about with Jaylen Pul, though, is all the hype that Jaylen Pul was getting in the offseason, and even the flashes that we've started to see where on week 5 versus Miami, Jaylen Pul had an 100% snap share, 6 targets, 1 reception for 13 yards. I mean, this offense was just pitiful. He did have, like we said, that 6 targets, but I'm just banking on if Drake May can any type of life into this offense, they need a number 1 wide receiver. So whether it's going to be a guy like a Jaylen Pul, whether it is going to be a guy like a Pop Douglas, I'm not saying that I love it for Drake May. This offensive line's absolutely brutal for the New England Patriots, but the part that I am excited for is the opportunity that Jaylen Pul is putting out there. And so when you're looking at the end of your bench, when you're looking at guys, even if it is a terrible offense, the Patriots are going to have to be throwing the ball a crap load in the second half of all these games. I'm going to take a bet on a guy like a Jaylen Pul as a mustache. He's only currently rostered in 19% of the league, so go check out some Jaylen Pul as another mustache player. The next guy we're going to talk about mustache is going to be Ray Davis for the Buffalo Bills. And with James Cook looking to be out on Monday night, this could be a huge game for Ray Davis. Now you're going to say to me, Caleb, he's just a handcuff running back. Why are you picking up? And I think a lot of the other question is that Ray Davis, he had minimal usage in last week in the loss. He had 2 targets for 4 yards. He was barely involved. I would say that James Cook and then Tyler Johnson were getting the majority of the roles. I'm excited if for some reason James Cook is to miss this game. Ray Davis's value instantly goes up. Now, James Cook, what is this injury going to last? I don't know. Is this a pickup for a week, for 2 weeks? But a Ray Davis in a Buffalo Bills offense, I know it's a terrible matchup versus the Jets, and they're really great front 7. But I do think you need to be considering adding Ray Davis. He's 16% rostered, especially if you're in a little bit slightly deeper league and or you're super desperate at the running back position this week. Ray Davis would be a guy that I'd be looking to stash. My next mustache player, and it's going to be Clyde EdwardsHelaire for the Kansas City Chiefs. And we talked a few weeks ago about Kareem Hunt. Hopefully you picked up Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, I always thought was going to be the clear one. They signed him. Not that I didn't think Carson Steele had upside. Kareem Hunt has definitely taken this backfield by storm. But the thing is, Clyde EdwardsHelaire is going to be returning. He didn't return this last week in week 5. They have the bye. We're planning on him returning in week 7. And I think the question then becomes is what is this pecking order until Isaiah Pacheco comes back? I still think it's probably going to be the Kareem Hunt's 1, but I could easily see Clyde EdwardsHelaire climbing into that RB2 RB2 role and even climbing into the RB1 role because of the draft capital and because of the performance. Now, I know Kareem Hunt looks super good in week 5 versus New Orleans, but I do think there's going to be upside to be had with a guy like Clyde EdwardsHelaire going forward. So definitely stash some Clyde EdwardsHelaire. He's only 14% rostered. If you have a bench spot and you can wait a few weeks, Clyde EdwardsHelaire is my next stash player. My next guy that we want to talk about stashing, it's going to be Tai Chandler. And Tai Chandler's been in this video before, so he's a returner. And Tai Chandler, 5 fantasy points in week 5 versus the Jets. He did have 14 attempts for 30 yards. And I think the thing is, he saw a high of 16 touches in this game. He was pressed into these RB1 duties after Aaron Jones suffered that hip injury. But we, like I've said, we haven't seen Aaron Jones be able to play a full season. Aaron Jones gives you a solid 11 to 12 games. In the meantime, you're going to want to have a guy like Tai Chandler, especially if you own Aaron Jones, especially if he's a high-end running back for you on your team, because Tai Chandler will get that volume. And this Minnesota Vikings team, as much as we know they're throwing the ball a ton, they will be in the end zone, red zone a ton, which is going to benefit a guy like Tai Chandler if he were to become the clear one in this offense. So definitely be targeting a Tai Chandler as a must stash guy. The next guy we're going to talk about as a must stash is going to be Trey Benson. And I honestly, up to this point, have been kind of disappointed in Trey Benson's overall opportunity. He was active, but no snaps in week 5. And if you look at his snap share, 13, 33, 3, and 19. James Conner is just continuing to dominate this backfield, which is great because I drafted James Conner in a bunch of leagues. But Trey Benson, let's not forget, was an early 3rd round pick, super explosive running back out of the University of Florida State. The part that I want to continue to reiterate is we have seen a massive amount of injuries in the fantasy football landscape over the first 5 weeks of the season. James Conner has proven to himself that he cannot stay healthy. James Conner is good for 10 to 12 games a year, and he always gets nicked up. Now, in those games, absolute PPR, absolute point per game machine. If for some reason James Conner is to go down over these next 5 to 6 weeks, Trey Benson's going to be an absolute league winner, not only because of the upside, but because of the explosion that he's going to be able to provide comparative to a guy like James Conner. James Conner's old, reliable. Trey Benson, to me, is the lightning. The same exact thing that we're seeing a little bit with Zach Moss and Chase Brown, I believe we could start to see with Trey Benson heading over the next 2 weeks. And so definitely, if you got James Conner, make sure that you have Trey Benson stashed on the backside of your bench, because I do think the upside is there. And I do think if you got his opportunity, Trey Benson would look really good, especially in the back half of the season. The next stash we're going to be talking about is going to be Kamani Vidal for the Chargers. And we've seen this Chargers team essentially just rely on J.K. Dobbins as that main running back. But Gus Edwards has been essentially non-existent this whole season. And so I'm not saying that Kamani Vidal is going to be anything, because he was the hype of the fantasy football community coming in as a stash in the year. And then he's literally put up 0, and I mean 0 fantasy points this whole year. Hasn't even gotten into the game. So you're going to say to me, Caleb, well, why are we like thinking that if he's not suiting up right now, he's going to get any work? Gus Edwards and Hassan Haskins have really been providing the backup depth. So you can argue that Kamani Vidal is the 4th running back in this backfield. But I do think in super deep leagues right now, he's only rostered in 8% of leagues. A guy like a Kamani Vidal down the stretch, down over the next few weeks, could be a really great stash, especially like we said, if you're in a 14-man or 16-team league. If you're in a 12-team, if you're in a deeper bench format, I definitely would look at a guy like Kamani Vidal, but probably not unless you're super desperate and the waiver wire is absolutely thin. The next guy we're going to be talking about a stash is going to be Blake Corman. For a lot of you, I've had Blake Corman in these videos before, and you've been like, Caleb, like he's not really getting any work. What's happening with Blake Corman? Well, this last week, 4.3 fantasy points, had 14% snap share, 5 attempts for 25 yards, 5 yards per carry, and caught 1 reception. Like I said, this is his 2nd game all season with any type of meaningful action. So it's still been the Ronnie Rivers show as the backup. I just continue to believe that Blake Corum is more talented than a guy like Ronnie Rivers. And maybe if you don't want to risk it for the biscuit, you're going to say, well, I want Ronnie Rivers. Well, Ronnie Rivers has had some decent moments for the Rams, but it has been the full Kyron Williams is a bell cow show. So I just wanted to bring Blake Corum in the stash video. I do think he has upside based on his profile from college, based on if he were to get the opportunity, if something were to happen to Kyron Williams. But you could argue that I should be talking about Ronnie Rivers instead. The next guy we're talking about stashing, and this is going to be a harder one for a lot of you. It's going to be Drake May for the Patriots. And when we talk about Drake May, let's not forget, was drafted right behind Jaden Daniels, right behind Caleb Williams. And it's a pretty bad situation. It's a pretty bad situation that he's walking into. We talked about how we think Pop Douglas and Jaylen Pul could potentially benefit from this, but especially in this week 6 game, they're not going to have Ramondre Stevenson, so he's going to have to rely on a guy like an Antonio Gibson with a very struggling offensive line. We are going to know very quick if Drake May has the spark. And I'm not saying saying that Drake May is going to go full Jaden Daniels, turn into a top 3 rest of season quarterback. Hear me out. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is in this quarterback landscape, when we're talking between the QB 11 to QB 15 right now, the points per game difference is very marginal. And so if Drake May, for any reason, like we said, we have no reason to believe that he could not be a guy and or he could struggle. We like to lean on the fact that we want to see these kids succeed, but there is a ton of adjustment to be had. I'm just saying, if you're in a deeper league, he's 15% rostered, might as well take a shot, especially if you're in a super flex league. He's probably already rostered, or you're in a deeper 12-man, 14-man, 16-man league. Getting a guy like a Drake May, especially before this week 1 start, if he goes bananas against Houston, we could be super hyped going forward, and he could be a great trade chip down the way, or he could be someone that ends up in your roster spot at QB, depending on how he plays. Now, like I said, he is just a stash, but I did want to bring him up and talk about him a little bit. The next guy we're going to talk about is Taysom Hill. He was ruled out in week 6. Like I said, he's still dealing with that broken rib. So he is 34 years old. So it's really impossible to us to really predict when he's going to come back. I don't think he's not going to be back this week. He's out. So we're looking at like week 7 or week 8. But this tight end landscape, as you kind of think about it, maybe you don't have to add Taysom Hill right now. He's only 29% rostered on Sleeper. Looking forward, Taysom Hill could be a guy that when he's out there is a top 12 tight end on a points per game basis historically is what he showed. This year hasn't been the best, but I did just want to throw it out there that Taysom Hill would be a great stash at the end of your bench if you do need it. So if you like fantasy football, I'm answering every start sit question down below. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.